Hello, everyone. No more stalling. Let's dive straight into the story. The sun had barely risen over the horizon when I stepped out onto my porch, a steaming mug of coffee in hand. I took a deep breath of the crisp morning air, letting it fill my lungs. But something felt off. My eyes landed on the gate leading to my own land, where a bright red sign was nailed up, glaring at me like a strike in the face. Offense: property access revoked until compliance. My eyebrows shot up. I leaned in to read the fine print. Failure to comply will result in further punishments. My pulse didn't race. I didn't lose my cool. Instead, I exhaled slowly, a smirk tugging at the edge of my mouth. They had no idea what they just started. I heard the sharp tap of heels on pavement. Before I even turned around, I already knew who it was. Marlene Peterson, the self-proclaimed ruler of the homeowner association, stood there with a smug grin, arms crossed over her chest, lips pursed in that irritating way that made you want to douse her with a hose just to hear her shriek. Behind her, a handful of homeowner association minions lingered, whispering to each other and throwing me smug little glances like they'd finally won some epic fight. "Morning, Tom," she said, her voice oozing fake sweetness. "I see you've noticed the notice." I took a slow sip of my coffee, letting the silence hang just long enough to make her uneasy. "I noticed it," I replied. "Just trying to figure out what makes you think you can lock a man out of his own land, Marlene." She let out an exaggerated sigh, like she was dealing with a stubborn kid. "Oh, Tom, it's all in the guidelines. You didn't pay the mandatory improvement fees, and the board voted unanimously, I might add, that until you comply, your property access is denied." I let out a short laugh. "Denied? Marlene, this isn't a community park. I own this land. Your property falls under homeowner association jurisdiction." She shot back, lifting her chin. "Which means you follow the rules, or you face the results." I glanced at the sheriff's cruiser parked a few yards away. The deputy inside was conveniently engrossed in his phone, clearly avoiding the scene. I knew how this game worked. The homeowner association had enough pull around here that even the law didn't want to interfere with them. "Let me get this straight," I said, stepping closer so she had to tilt her head to meet my stare. "You locked me out of my own land because I didn't pay some ridiculous fee for improvements I never signed up for." "Exactly," she said, flashing a plastic smile. "We are doing what's best for the community." I took a deep breath, rubbing my jaw. I wasn't mad, not yet. I was amused. Because Marlene had just made the biggest blunder of her life, and she didn't even know it. I glanced back at my farmhouse, my barn, the acres stretching out beyond it, all mine. Then my eyes drifted past the homeowner association houses to the single piece of property they'd somehow overlooked in their greedy little power trip. They thought they had me trapped, but I held something far more important. I looked back at Marlene, my smirk growing. "You have no idea what you've just caused." Her smile flickered. For a split second, "Oh, Tom," she said, exasperated, "don't make this tougher than it needs to be. Just pay the fine, and we'll lift the restriction." "Easy." I stepped toward the gate, gripping the lock. "And if I don't?" Her smug grin returned. "Well, then you'll find out what happens when you oppose the homeowner association." I held her stare for a long moment, then turned and strolled back toward my house. "Good," I called over my shoulder, "because you're about to find out what happens when the homeowner association challenges me." Marlene scoffed. But I didn't need to look back to know a tiny crack of uncertainty was creeping in. I spent the rest of the morning going about my day, feeling the homeowner association's eyes on me from their pristine little homes. They thought they'd won. They thought they'd conquered me. By afternoon, I decided it was time to fire the first shot in my counterstrike. If they wanted to play dirty, I'd play wiser. I grabbed the thick folder from my study, the one stuffed with every land deed and contract from my grandfather's era, and flipped through it until I found the one that made me grin. My land wasn't just my home. It was the foundation of the entire homeowner association. More specifically, it was the source of their water and electricity. They hadn't just locked me out of my property. They picked a fight with the guy who controlled their supply. By evening, I spotted Marlene again, She was on the homeowner association clubhouse porch, delivering some grandiose speech to her loyal followers, probably crowing about how she'd finally tamed me. I watched from my porch, sipping a fresh cup of coffee, grinning at their misplaced confidence. I'd let them have their moment. Soon enough, that smugness would turn to disorder, and I'd be there to savor every second of their collapse. The next morning, the neighborhood was buzzing with whispers. The homeowner association folks who'd been so cocky yesterday were still basking in their victory. They strutted around the cul-de-sac, chatting in their perfectly trimmed yards, relishing in their triumph over me. I let them enjoy it. It's always fun watching people celebrate their own downfall before they even see it coming. I spent the morning tending to my land like always, keeping one eye on the homeowner association schemes. They were too wrapped up in their power rush to notice me, watching, waiting for the perfect moment to act. The best part, I didn't even need to get dramatic. I just had to flip a few switches. Figuratively and literally, they thought they controlled me, but they'd missed one tiny detail. I controlled their water and power. The land my grandfather bought decades ago had once been empty fields. As the town grew and developments emerged, his property stayed untouched even as the homeowner association houses sprang up around it. What the homeowner association never bothered to check was that their whole setup, water well, and private substation sat on my land. I'd never charged them for it. I'd never even thought about it until now. I strolled into my shed where the main water valve sat. An old but reliable system, I kept running for years. With one solid twist, I shut it off. Just like that, the homeowner association's water was gone. No flushing toilets, no showers, no sprinklers. I held off on the electricity for a bit. I wanted them to linger in their confusion first. The first hint of trouble came from across the street. A woman in a bathrobe burst onto her porch, shampoo still in her hair, yelling about the water being out. More doors flung open, neighbors shouting to each other, trying to figure out what was happening. I leaned against my porch railing, sipping my coffee, watching the disorder unfold. It was almost too easy. Within an hour, Marlene stormed into the street, her perfect hair slightly messy. She wasn't used to things going wrong in her tightly controlled world. She clutched her phone, jabbing at the screen, but it was obvious she wasn't getting the answer she wanted. I caught fragments of her conversation as she paced. Something about the water company not being responsible. Something about an internal supply issue. She had no clue. That's when I cut the power. The moment the homeowner association neighborhood went dark, the real chaos hit. Garage doors wouldn't budge. Alarms beeped, then died, and a wave of confusion and frustration rushed through the street. Marlene spun around, eyes wide, looking for someone to pin this on. Then she saw me, standing on my porch, casually sipping my coffee like nothing was wrong. She marched over her heels, clicking angrily. A small crowd trailed behind her, all of them looking just as shaken. "You," she spat, pointing a finger at me. "What did you do?" I raised an eyebrow. "Me? I didn't do anything. Our power's out. Our water's out." She threw her hands up. "Are you seriously going to pretend you have nothing to do with this?" I took another slow sip, letting her panic. Sounds like a homeowner association problem. The crowd behind her started murmuring confusion, turning to suspicion. Some were still figuring it out. Others were just realizing they didn't know how their neighborhood actually functioned. Marlene gritted her teeth. "You're the only one not affected by this." I chuckled. "Well, yeah, that's because my property isn't tied to your homeowner association system." One of the homeowner association board members stepped forward, an older guy named Harold, who'd always just nodded along with Marlene's orders. "What does that mean?" I sighed like I was explaining something extremely simple. "It means the well and the substation that provide your water and power are on my land." I gestured toward the fenced-off area at the back of my property. "They've been running fine for years, free of charge, because I never bothered to shut them off." The realization hit like a ton of bricks. A few of the sharper ones went pale, glancing at Marlene with looks that were quickly turning from confusion to fury. Marlene took a deep breath, trying to regain control. "This is extortion," she hissed. You can't just turn off our utilities. I gave her a look of pure entertainment. Extortion? You locked me out of my own property. Over some phony violation? I'm just enforcing my own rules. Isn't that what the homeowner association does? She opened her mouth, then snapped it shut. She knew she had no legal ground to stand on. Someone in the crowd groaned. You mean we've been paying homeowner association fees for years, and we don't even own our own water and power? Another voice, louder, piped up. I just lost a fridge full of groceries. This is madness. Marlene spun around. Everyone calm down. We'll get this resolved. But the crowd wasn't listening anymore. They were talking among themselves, their trust in the homeowner association falling fast. That's when she made her last frantic play. She yanked out her phone again, probably to call a lawyer or the city. But I knew something she didn't. The homeowner association had no legal claim to my land, and I'd separated my property from city services years ago. The local government couldn't interfere. Marlene slowly turned back to me, fear creeping into her eyes. She'd picked a fight she couldn't win. I smiled, giving her a slow nod. So, Marlene, what's it going to be? Want to talk like sensible people or keep playing homeowner association dictator? She swallowed hard, the weight of her ego finally crushing her. We can make a deal, she said, her voice quieter now. I chuckled. Oh, I don't make deals with people who try to take from me. And just like that, the power shifted. Marlene wasn't in charge anymore. The homeowner association wasn't in charge. I was. And I wasn't about to let them forget it. Marlene stood there motionless, her phone gripped tight as she processed my words. The confidence she flaunted for years had disappeared. The homeowner association members, once so sure of their dominance, now stared at me like I held their fate in my hands. The neighborhood had turned into a ghost town. No water, no power. Everything stalled. The usual hum of sprinklers, garage doors, and AC units was replaced by frustrated voices and slamming doors. Their perfect little world was collapsing, and I was the one swinging the demolition ball. Marlene cleared her throat, forcing a shaky smile. Tom, let us be reasonable. You can't just cut off essential services. People have families, kids, elderly folks who need water and electricity. I let out a sharp laugh. You should have thought of that before you tried to boot me off my own land. You wanted to play power games, Marlene. Now, you're seeing what real power feels like. A voice from the crowd cut in, frustration boiling over. Why didn't we know about this? We've been paying homeowner association fees forever, and we don't even control our utilities. Another homeowner threw his hands up. Are we even legally part of this homeowner association? Or is this another scam? Marlene whirled around her face, flushing. Of course, we're legal. We're a properly established homeowners association. I shrugged. Sure, you're a legit homeowner association, but you didn't do your homework. You built your precious neighborhood without realizing you were leeching off private land. I leaned against my porch railing, watching the truth sink in. And now, you're in a real mess. Marlene's face twitched as she forced another smile. All right, Tom, let's talk like adults. What do you want? I pretended to mull it over, then shook my head. See, Arlene, that's the thing. I don't want anything. I was fine living here, minding my business, growing my crops, keeping my land. Then you decided to flex, thinking you could bully me into paying your dumb fees for improvements I never asked for. She opened her mouth to argue, but I held up a hand. And now here we are. You pushed, and I'm pushing back. Harold, the board member, stepped forward, rubbing his temples like he had a migraine coming on. So what's your plan here, Tom? You can't leave us without water and power forever. I shrugged again. I could, but I won't. I'm not a tyrant, Harold. Unlike your fearless leader here, I've got a heart. Marlene glared at me, but she stayed quiet. She knew she'd lost the control, and every passing second made it worse for her. I sighed, making a show of scanning the street. Now, I turn your water and power back on, but that would mean you all admit who's really running things here. Harold crossed his arms and, what's that supposed to mean? I smirked. It means Marlene and the rest of the homeowner association board stepped down, effective immediately. A wave went through the crowd. Some looked relieved, others shocked. Marlene, though, looked like she'd bitten into a sour apple. "This is ridiculous," she snapped. "I'm not stepping down over some petty." A woman in the crowd cut her off. "Marlene, enough. You got us into this mess." A few others nodded, muttering agreement. One sighed. "Honestly, I've been fed up with the homeowner association's nonsense for years. If this is what it takes to end it, I'm all for it." Marlene glanced around, realizing her supporters were melting away faster than snow in July. Her perfect little kingdom was turning on her. She let out a tight breath and clenched her jaw. "Fine," she said, her voice barely hiding her rage. "I resign." Harold followed, then another board member. Within minutes, the whole homeowner association board had quit, leaving the neighborhood officially leaderless. I pushed off the railing and stretched my arms. Well, that was easier than I expected. Marlene spun on her heel, her face contorted with rage. "You think you've won, Tom?" I grinned. "I don't think. I know." She stormed off, and I watched her go, shaking my head. With the homeowner association dissolved, the next step was a simple. I strolled back to my shed, turned a few valves and flipped a few switches. Within moments, the sound of water rushing through pipes and the hum of power kicking back on filled the air. Applause broke out from the homeowners thrilled to have their amenities restored. A few even came over to shake my hand, thanking me. Some admitted they'd hated the homeowner association for years, but felt too trapped to fight it. Marlene, meanwhile, was packing her bags. By the next morning, she'd lost all her influence, and without the homeowner association to prop her up, she had no power over anyone. Her house, once the center of her schemes, was now just a hollow shell. As a final gesture, I made a little move. When Marlene's house went up for sale, I had a friend snap it up. The second the deal closed, he slapped a new sign on the mailbox. "Tom's Homeowner Association Free Zone." I made sure Marlene saw it before she left town. The way her face turned scarlet was the cherry on top. That evening, I sat on my porch watching the sunset over my land. My land, which no one would ever try to take again. My farm was calm, my home secure, and the homeowner association was just a faded memory. One of my neighbors strolled over with a six-pack of beer. "So, Tom, what's next?" I cracked open a can, leaned back in my chair, and grinned. "Next, I just kick back and enjoy the tranquility." And that was that. The fight was over. The homeowner association was gone, and I'd made damn sure no one would ever interfere with me or my land again. Life was good. Thank you for watching. Heartfelt story. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful tales of strength and justice. See you in the next one.